Today I'm going to show you how you can take your footage looking like this to this. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video for a bonus tip to show a scientifically proven technique that Hollywood editors and colorists use to make their Hollywood stars pop off the screen, and you're going to be surprised at how easy this tip is to do. If you're ready to upgrade the look and feel of your next project, let's jump on in. Also, a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Dell. They sent me their new monitor. It's a 6K Ultrasharp 32-inch with a built-in webcam, and I'll tell you more about it later on. So here we are in Premiere Pro, and by the way, there are time-coded chapters in my tutorial so you can skip around and review different sections. And right now I'm in the color workspace. So if you go up here on this little icon, you can go to color, and you should have the Lumetri Color panel open here on the right, and then Lumetri Scopes. The funny thing about my shots in our studio here is that I think when I dump this footage into my timeline, it looks pretty good off the bat. But then when I started working with colorist Tony Z, he was able to show me the power of just a little bit of color grading. And ever since we started paying more attention to our color grading inside of Premiere Pro, and I just think it brings it up to a new level. First, let's create an adjustment layer. Let's right click on this empty area, go to New Item, and select Adjustment Layer. And then let's drag this adjustment layer on top of our footage here. So this is where we're going to apply all of our main color correction effects too. Now, the first step is to correct our base footage to make it as optimal as possible before we start to go in and tweak all the different elements here. Now, we can use Lumetri Color to do our basic correction. If you go over here in Lumetri Color panel and you select Auto, for example, which uses Adobe Sensei technology, it'll make some adjustments to our footage. But it's not necessarily ideal here. You can use the white balance tool and select an area that's kind of neutral gray, and it can adjust the tint and temperature, but you can see that the before and after, it almost looks a little bit more yellow. It doesn't look that great. So you can go in and make some adjustments, but I want to show you what me and my team use. It's actually a plugin, and I know you're like, oh, a plugin, another one. But this one actually gives you a guided correction process, which really makes it easy for us to create this foundational base. So instead, I'm going to go to Effects and search for Colorista, and this is by Red Giant. It's part of the Magic Bullet suite. And let's drag this on our adjustment layer and then just select guided color correction. And here you're going to choose your color space. And if you don't know, you can just press I don't know, but we're going to select standard video. Here you can see it's in black and white. What's really great here is it takes away the color, so you're not distracted by it. You're just focusing on the light. So the black levels here, what's really cool is it actually, sets it at the standard. If you go too far left, this shows where the clipping happens. I like to have it just a little bit above that line. So now we're going to go on to the white levels. And here you can see as we move it to the right, this is kind of the recommended area, but the red areas are getting too hot, which is really, really useful to know. But here I'm just going to have the light itself be red because it's clearly overexposed in the shot, and I think that that's okay to have some components as long as my face is not red. And now here is our midtones. This is their recommended hump here, but we don't have to follow it exactly, but we can get kind of close. Again, this is an art form, right? Now let's go to contrast. I'm going to reduce the contrast as it's showing us here. And for saturation, I don't want to add too much saturation that it's recommending here. So I like to just add a little bit less here, not too much, because I know that I'm probably going to go in and make some adjustments later on. Now we're getting into color balance, and color balance has to do with the temperature of the shot and the tint into magenta and the green. And what's really useful here is this little display here. You can see that my face is kind of red, and we don't want it to be too red. Let's select a neutral gray area. And now you can see my face is even more red. So we can actually tint this just a little bit over to the left. Let's go ahead and let's say that this is good to go. So here we are at the final result, and you can see this is the before and this is the after. Now you can see that there's a lot more detail in the background, right? Before it was a lot more darker around the edges, and there is clearly more contrast in the original shot. But now that we have a solid base to work from, we can go in and start to make fine-tune adjustments. Next up, we can do some color smoothing to our face. Now, this is also a plugin by Red Giant, and it's completely optional, right? But let me show you how it works here. So Cosmo 2 is what it's called. Drag and drop it on the adjustment layer. And then here we're going to select the skin sample. So let's use this dropper tool and just select an area of the cheek here. And you can see right away it kind of makes my face look a little bit more yellow, and you can go in and refine the mask. So if you show the selection, you can go in and adjust the offset. So that way, we're just selecting the skin as well as the tolerance. If we do too much, then it'll take more of the hair, which we don't want. Just want a subtle amount. And if I'm going to sacrifice something, I would sacrifice the highlights in my face because there's just not a lot of detail there. So there's a little bit not being selected there on the left hand side. So let's just reduce this amount here. All right, so now that we have our selection with our skin sample, we're gonna leave the smoothing as it is because people can go a little bit crazy and add too much smoothing and it just looks super fake if we turn this on and off. And then down here is where I like to go in and adjust the skin yellow and pink. So you can see if I go to the left, it just makes me look super yellow, which we don't want. And then over here, it can just make the skin a little bit more pink, which looks more natural. Now, I'm not going to go in blindly and do this. I actually like to use the Lumetri scopes. So what we need to do to show the skin tone line using our Vectorscope is select our video clip, and then we're going to just create a mask around a patch of my skin. And now if we go to Lumetri scopes, you can see the Vectorscope is here, which is Vectorscope YUV. Let's turn off the waveform. And right now you can see it's right on the skin tone line. But if it's not there, let's actually first move our Lumetri scopes down here and then go to Effect Controls, select our adjustment layer. And here let's go down to yellow and pink and watch what happens when I move it too far to the left. See how that is moving and it's way too yellow? And if we move it to the right, it goes way too red. So here you want it to be just on the line, maybe even just slightly above is okay. And this applies to all different skin tones, by the way, because we all have the red blood underneath of our skin. When you're editing, just turn off this effect, then turn it back on at the end. So that way you won't experience any sort of delay while you're editing because it is a heavy effect. So next we're going to start painting our image. What if we want to start just by brightening this lamp in the background? We can go over here and we can go to add Lumetri effect, and you can see it adds our Lumetri effect, and we can actually rename this to stay organized to lamp and make sure that you have lamp selected here when you're making these corrections. So for this, we're actually just going to draw a mask around the lamp because it's a static shot. I'll just use this pen tool and let's just draw a basic mask here around our lamp. And you can use this little icon here to adjust the feathering. So our mask is just around this lamp here. We can go now to curves and go to hue saturation curves to select just the purple color and increase the saturation just of that purple. So you can also widen this so it's a little bit broader, and then just push this up. You can see we can go really hot or desaturate it completely. Just a subtle amount here I think is good, just to make it pop. You can also add another dot and bring up the saturation more in the pinks versus the blues. And now this is the before and the after. All right, so now we can create some more effects, but before that, just want to check in and make sure this video is helping you out. And if it is, be sure to give it a thumbs up. I'm Kelsey, I'm the host and creator here of Premiere Gal. And if you're new to the world of video editing or creation, welcome, new friend. You are in the right place. Here we like to take our time. We like to understand the why of doing things instead of just, quickly doing it. And that way you can start to learn how to creatively make your images more powerful. And now I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Dell. So Dell sent me this awesome 6K Ultrasharp monitor to start testing out with my workflow. First off, I love that I can just hook up my MacBook Pro with the USB-C Thunderbolt, which provides 140 watt of power to both charge my laptop as well as connect it to the screen without having to use an HDMI cable. And this monitor is great for video editing and specifically color grading because it's IPS black. Basically, it means that it has better color accuracy, contrast, and brightness compared to other types of panels like VA or TN monitors. And there's also less color shifting when you view it from different angles because this monitor, you can tilt it in every direction, up or down, turn it vertically, and the color stays the same, no matter which way you're looking at it. And my favorite part about this monitor is the little quick access pop-out hub, which has two USB-C ports with 15 watt power and a USB-A port, which supports up to 10 gigabytes per second of data transfer. So I like to use it to hook up my microphone to charge my microphone case for my lavalier mic and power up this Rode microphone, and I no longer need a USB-C hub here on my MacBook to clutter my desk. And unlike other monitors I've used with Dell, this one comes with a built-in webcam. And here's a side-by-side of the Dell webcam to my Apple built-in webcam. You can see that the Dell is a lot more crisp. And so this is the Dell webcam, and you can see it's a much larger field of view. So if I get up here, you can almost see a full body shot of me. Plus, it has the AI auto reframe when you download the application to control the monitor on your computer. In addition to that, you can go up and control the brightness and contrast of your screen, as well as the color space. So you should definitely install this application if you're using any Dell monitor. If you're interested in trying out this monitor for yourself, I've dropped my affiliate links down below. When you use those links, it helps support the channel. And thanks, Dell, for sponsoring this video. Let's get back into color grading. Next, let's try the eyes here. So once again, we're going to go up here to create another stack. We're going to add a Lumetri Color Effect. And for this, I'm going to use HSL Secondary because I don't want to have to track my eyes, right? Because I'm moving my head. And HSL Secondary will allow you to select just that color and create a mask. It does require just a little bit more fine-tuning of work, but trust me, it'll make a big difference. It can be a little bit intimidating at first, but the best way to tackle it is to zoom in on our eyes here. And so now let's use this dropper tool to set our color. So we can go in here and just click to set. And I notice that it doesn't select the right color when I'm zoomed in to, let's say, at 400%. What I notice is if I'm zoomed in at 100% and I use the set color tool and try to select it, it works okay. You can see here it got kind of the blue area, but sometimes it's hard to be so accurate. So if Premiere Pro team, if you're watching this, let's fix that. Let's go ahead and turn on the color/gray mask. And this shows us the selection that we've made. And you can see it's selecting some parts, but we want it to focus on the eyes. So we can try to go in and add more, but again, it just doesn't work at this level. So what we can do is actually expand, first of all, the hue that we want it to encapsulate. So my eyes are kind of bluish and green in them. So we can expand this to encapsulate more, but we also have to be mindful of the background too, because as we increase the hue, it increases more of the background. So we want to limit that to just the eyes if possible. It's really difficult to narrow down just the eyes because there's so much green and blues in the background. So what I'm going to do is on this eye layer, also use a circle mask here to just limit my eyes just to this region. So it's okay because my head doesn't move that much, just to have this area affected. So that way we don't affect the background. So now we can go in and make these adjustments to the hue, saturation, and the lightness of the image until it looks right. So I'm going to quickly go through and make these adjustments, but don't worry because you'll be able to download the project file by becoming a patron, and you can see exactly what we did to select my eyes using these parameters. You'll get access to this project file, which I've linked down below. And here's the before and the after. So now we can move on to the lips. Let's go to add a Lumetri color effect and let's rename it Now we could use the curves for this, but let me show you why I'm not going to use the curves. Because if I select just my lip color to make it more saturated, it also increases my skin tone. And that's why we tend to go with the HSL Secondary instead of using the curves. So what we can do now is go into HSL Secondary. I'm going to select kind of the reddish color and turn on the masking tool. So I'm going to shift over the hue until we get mainly the lips here. Again, it is selecting the other parts of the scarf that are also red here. So what we might have to do is also create a mask in this case. So just select this part, use the feathering here, and then we can make more adjustments. So this is the best mask that I could get right now. And from here, I can go in and I can increase the lightness or darkness of this, play around with that. I can adjust the tint if I want to make it a little bit more pink, and I can remove the mask here so it doesn't look as funky. Can also change the color slightly, can adjust the temperature. We can add some color to it. We don't want to add too much because look, it's also affecting partially the skin tone here. So we just want to add a subtle amount. And now we just have a little bit more saturated of a lip. So those are the lips here. Now I'm going to go in and use these same techniques to clean up my face skin tone using Lumetri Color. All right, let's add a background Lumetri Color Effect. Add Lumetri Color Effect. And here we can create a mask. Just click around me. So that way we just have the background selected and we can add some feathering, of course. And this we can adjust and we can do our own custom vignette to either make the background a little bit darker or brighter, depending on how much detail we want to preserve. With a vignette, you get kind of this standard shape, this oval shape, but with our own mask, we were able to create a custom one around myself. And now for the greens, we can increase the vibrancy up, so it's more in the yellows. We can just play around with the saturation. We don't want it to be too much. And we can also adjust the hue. So we can also make dots around the green area here. Can bring it down to be kind of a different color of a green. So make it a little bit more blue of a green. All depends on what you're going for. Okay, so that's the background. So now we want to kind of do an overall mastering effect of our image. So let's go up here. Let's add Lumetri Color Effect. Let's rename this to Master. And here we can go in and do kind of an S-curve adjustment if you want to. Just a subtle amount to darken the shadows slightly and increase the highlights slightly. And here we might also want to go in and do some final basic corrections to the temperature if we want to. So we can go into basic correction and we can adjust the temperature to be a little bit warmer if we want. And finally, the tip that you've been waiting for with the Hollywood curves, which will do a subtle effect. And this is actually an orange and teal effect. And you might be like,
oh, we know orange and teal.
This is a really quick way of doing it. Let's just call this orange and teal. What we're going to do is create a dot here on our red line. And we can pull this down to reveal the blue here in the shadows and pop this up in the highlights. Now you can do a very subtle amount, so it's not too much, just a little bit. But if this is still too much, we can undo these points and make it a little bit higher and maybe just do a subtle amount here. This is the YouTube version of the orange and teal. The Hollywood, you adjust both like an S curve. So see a little bit more blues in the shadows of the image. As one final adjustment, because of gamma compensation, you can't apply a LUT. So what I recommend doing is creating another adjustment layer. So right click, new adjustment layer. You can see under basic, under creative here, we added a QT gamma compensation. I'll put a link down below. So apply that adjustment layer onto your footage. It does make it a little bit darker. So that way the export is more true to the colors that we created. So this is the final color grade that we were able to create. And you can see if we turn off the color correction layer and the gamma compensation, this is the original with the color correction on. It just looks so much more vibrant. It's almost like we were just painting the different elements, and you can see this by going to effect controls and see how many different Lumetri effects we stacked on top of each other. And remember that you can always go in and make further adjustments in the future. For example, you can go down to this drop down and go to skin, for example. Since we adjusted the curves for this, you can always go in and play with the hue versus saturation to adjust the skin hue to make it a little bit more saturated. You can also go down to Luma versus Sat, and this adjusts the saturation of the bright areas. So by just using this curve, you can see we can brighten those skin tones up or bring it down to make it not as saturated. And as one little final note, if you go to Lumetri Color, you can see that I also added a hair mask here. If we turn this off, you can see it doesn't look as vibrant, and if we turn it on, it just adds a little bit more of a pop. So I hope this was a great introduction for you into the world of color grading in Premiere Pro. Once again, you can download our template and you can start using it. If this was helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and you can watch more videos on my channel about color right over here. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, keep creating better video with Gal. See you next time. Bye.